This podcast is part of the Michigan Sports and Entertainment Podcast Network. Go to michigansportsandentertainment.com for more great podcasts.
Look out, Larkin's wide open. There's the pass. He's in the clear. Scores! Dylan Larkin! Zadina wants it, got it. He shoots, he scores! Dylan Zadina, his first national hockey league goal.
Yo, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to this week's episode of the Hockeytown Rundown podcast. I'm your host, Chase Sussex, and I'm here with Jay. Say what's up, Jay.
What's going on, everyone? Getting ready for the draft. How about you?
Absolutely, man. I'm hyped for the draft. It's like you said, it's the our Stanley Cup basically right now. So, I'm looking forward to the draft. We decided to get an episode out for you guys, kind of to do a big preview before the draft happens on Friday. So we're looking forward to giving you our thoughts, and you've kind of heard some of our thoughts on the draft already, but I think this is the biggest sort of preview that we'll do towards headed towards the draft. So you ready to dive in?
Absolutely. Let's do this thing.
All right. So as we've talked about before, we've kind of talked about some prospects that that we've liked, and we've definitely narrowed it down. And we talked to we've been talking to you guys a lot on the Twitter as well. Jay posted a video, if you guys hadn't seen it, on the Twitter, and we'll get into that a little bit. But Jay and I, we've kind of narrowed down our list to the prospects that we really like heading into the draft. I think that I can speak for Jay in this sense, the fact that we're both really kind of looking at Trevor Zegras, if that's sort of our number one prospect, if Bowen Byram's not on the board. And I'm not necessarily sure I'm if you still have that same thought, but that's kind of my thought process. I know I've said in the past that I've been more of a Cole Caulfield type guy, but I definitely think we talked about it off air a little bit, the fact that a playmaker is just kind of what the Red Wings have needed, and Zegras just makes the most sense. But there's been a lot of murmurs about other things. Guys like Kirby Dach are on the rise, and it's definitely kind of interesting. So what are some of your thoughts on that? Are you still kind of locked on Zegras, or are you thinking a guy like Cousins or Dach could rise up and potentially be an option for the Red Wings at 6?
No, I'm actually going off the board a bit. I'm looking for a guy like Bobby Brink out of Sioux City in the USHL with our number 6 pick. Actually, I've soured on Zegras quite a bit. I think he's going to be a bust. That is a joke, okay, folks. No, my position hasn't changed. I think that we can get into the individual guys a little bit more, I guess, but Zegras, for the same reasons I've said before, and I've the folks that had responded to some of the polls and the questions, it's pretty clear a lot of people are on the same wavelength, really. It's just the opportunity to draft a elite playmaker that, we were talking about it before we started recording, just the, imagining having Trevor Zegras up the middle, being able to make, the plays that he makes to get guys like, Zadina the puck, whether it's in close or from the bottom of the circle, or being able to, get a stretch pass out to Athanasiou and have him do his thing and use his speed. I think that, that really excites me, just thinking about a line of Zegras, Zadina, and AA, while you have Larkin, Mantha, and Bertuzzi, and then possibly, your third C and someone like a Veleno with a Taro Hirose, and maybe a Michael Rasmussen on the third line, or a Svechnikov, or however that works out. I mean, you can start to see if they could get an elite playmaking center, just what that can do for the depth for this team, and my concern with going, with Caulfield is not really not his size or anything like that, because I just feel like he's got that elite skill set that you really, you're not going to find. There's really very few players in this draft that have that skill set. I mean, Kaliev, the other guy that a lot of people tout as having elite goal scoring capability. He's not as dynamic in other areas of the game, but he's up there, and obviously you've got Capo Caco. It's just that, as far as what I feel is in the best interest of the Red Wings and what they're trying to do, and just, seeing the way he plays and how creative he is, I think once people get online and watch some of this guy's highlights, or, if they do draft him, see what he does in like a development camp, or, follow him, I think you're going to love what you see, because this is, I mean, for anybody who grew up with the Red Wings, with the puck possession game, this is the kind of player that they would have loved to have had years ago. And I think if we already had somebody like that, it'd be Cole Caulfield all day long for me. My concern is, we just drafted Zadina, who is supposed to be an elite goal scorer. You've got another winger in Mantha that's a goal scorer. You can never have enough goal scorers, but somebody's got to get him the puck. And Caulfield's the kind of goal scorer that really, I wouldn't say depends on it, but you really want to have somebody with elite hockey IQ and playmaking ability to play with him to get the most out of them. And we're already kind of depending on AA, who's not really, I wouldn't call a playmaking center. He's more of a goal scoring speed type guy. And then really a guy who's kind of, I don't want to say past his prime, but, is not as an effective, center as you'd want, someone like a Nielsen. So I just think Zegras is the guy. For me, he just seems to check all the boxes that I'm looking for what the Red Wings need. And he is, to me, the best player available at that spot.
Absolutely. Yeah, I completely agree with that. And it'll definitely be interesting because, like we kind of mentioned, even though if those guys aren't necessarily the best available for the Red Wings, I know they've definitely drawn a lot of traction. I know you told me off air the fact that, there's some teams that are considering taking Doc in the top 5. So if that, if the I guess if the stars align for the Red Wings, to say the least, Bowen Byram might potentially be there. And I think it's one of those things like last year. I think, the Red Wings are sort of ready to take, that one specific player, probably a guy like, Zegras. But, if Bowen Byram's there, I think it's kind of like one of those, it's like a Philip Zadina situation where they're running up to the podium to make that pick because, if he somehow falls, which I still don't see him falling. I mean, but I mean, that's still obviously, I think the pick there. Do you agree? Like if Byram's there, like you think that's the pick, like over Zegras?
Oh yeah. I mean, if Byram's there, I would be surprised if he is there. I mean, very surprised, but I don't see how they possibly would pass up on him. I mean, we're not talking like some like 6'4" monster defenseman that like it isn't like, I guess let me back up a little bit. He is uber skilled. Like, he is an offensive defenseman. We're talking about a guy who outscored the rest of the WHL in the playoffs as a defenseman. Okay.
It's crazy.
So we're not talking about some lumbering big, like, go for the big guy, he's big, it's like, I remember years past, it was always about, we need a huge defenseman to clear the net, I mean, this is literally like an offensive, elite offensive talented defenseman. So if he's there, those guys, those are the kind of players that you just hardly ever find.
Mm-hmm.
So if you got a chance to grab one, you better grab one. And that's why I think Chicago is going to run up there and take him. I know a lot of people are talking about Chicago liking, Turcotte. And he's definitely in there. There's even been some people, I don't know, I can't tell you, I remember exactly where it was from, but I've seen a couple things where they actually really like Cousins.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, I think it's going to be, Byram and then Turcotte or vice versa. The question really is if Byram and Turcotte are gone, what's LA going to do?
Yeah.
And that's where there's a lot of, I think that's where the uncertainty comes in,
LA,
that's,
yeah,
and
I
that's,
absolutely agree.
and that's the thing is like, if, Corey Pronman, if you guys haven't read on Corey Pronman, he's got a lot of stuff out there on The Athletic. And this guy is like ridiculously detailed with his rankings and he knows his stuff. And it's really interesting. If you go on there, you'll see the way that he approaches it. But, if Kirby Doc is taken fifth, I think you're going to see, personally, I think you're going to see the Wings go for Zegras.
Mm-hmm.
The question is, if Doc is still there when the Wings pick, is that who they're going to take? Because there's a lot of talk about the Red Wings being really big fans of Kirby Doc. And we'll get into the whole, I don't know when you want to do this, Chase, but we can get into the question that I pose about, who would you like the Red Wings to stay away from, or who would you consider to be the riskier pick? But, if I had my choice between Doc and Zegras, I'm going Zegras all day long. But, you can make the argument that Doc would be more of a home run potential than someone like a Dylan Cousins.
Absolutely, yeah, for sure.
So even though there are some holes, in his game, I mean, other than Jack Hughes and Capo Caco, I mean, name me any player in this draft that doesn't have a hole that needs to be addressed,
Yeah, for sure. I mean, not every single prospect is a pure. I mean, you get very few Connor McDavids and Jack Hughes in the draft. I mean, obviously that's the reason why those guys go number one overall, and those guys still have flaws in their game. I mean, Jack Hughes is still, he's not a very big guy. He needs to put on some muscle and needs to put on some weight. So there's flaws in every single player, and a lot of these guys aren't going to be able to, realistically be able to step out in the ice in the NHL in the start of next season. I don't see any guy at the Red Wings draft that it will start immediately. I just don't think it happens. So, again, it's one of those things where, again, yeah, like you said, I think Doc definitely has that sort of more home run potential than Cousins, and I do like Doc. I think a little bit more, at least what I've heard recently. But for sure, I think we both kind of share the the liking of Zegras there. But that, I mean, I know you mentioned the transition into some of the prospects we don't like headed into the draft, because that's actually a different interesting conversation that we posted on the Twitter. Like I mentioned earlier, Jay posted a video on our Twitter at Hockeytown Rundown, and he was asking sort of like some of the prospects that the Red Wings, you guys don't want to see the Red Wings draft, just want to completely stay away from for whatever reason. If there's just a prospect you really don't like, and I feel like there was a pretty shared, dislike of Podkolzin. So, I know you said you had a couple responses from the people on Twitter about that, but I know there was kind of a shared sort of, not necessarily hatred, but, dislike of Podkolzin at the sixth spot.
Yeah, I think I'll preface this with saying I think most of the people that are saying that are saying it without ever seeing the guy play.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not to dig on anybody necessarily. It's just there's not a lot of footage out there that you're seeing. I mean, he's hopped around on a lot of different teams, so his production has looked spotty. And he had a less than real impressive under 18 tournament. He really dominated the Holinka tournament last year, which is where a lot of the talk started from at the beginning of the season about, really think about it, all the way back to the lottery, people had him penciled in at number 3. Where things started to change was after the under 18, championships, and then the playoffs from all the different leagues. Bowen Byram just took off like a rocket, and then so much attention has been put on this USN TDP, the United States Development Team. So I think that's played into it. And then there's the concern that he's going to be in Russia for at least a year, maybe 2 years. His contract, I believe, is 2 years. He has every intention of coming to the NHL. He's already said it, that he wants to come to the NHL. So this isn't a situation where we're talking about a Russian player that really doesn't want to leave home. I think the concern, though, is no one really has seen much of him. And, it's kind of like any other draft. You hear about a guy that's fallen down and everyone kind of jumps on that train. You're like, oh, there must be something wrong, He doesn't have some of the elite skills that some of the other guys have. Like, number one, what he has going against him, he's not a center. He's not a defenseman. He's a winger. What do most Detroit fans right now want? A number one defenseman or a top center. Okay. So that he's got position going against him. The fact that he's Russian and hardly anybody's seen the guy play is against him. The fact that he's not the most elite goal scorer or a playmaker in the top of the draft is going against him, because that's held by guys like Caulfield and Zegras, Kirby Doc, but he is a very competitive player who, has all the tools that you need. He's the kind of guy that, I think if you saw him play, you probably wouldn't be that afraid to draft him, because he's the kind of player you can win with. But a lot of fans definitely put him on the list. And honestly, that was my response too. Not because I don't think that he would work well with the Red Wings, but just because I personally feel at number 6 for the value, it's too much risk for me.
No, I understand what you mean.
So anyway, let me look at some of these responses. We got, okay, so here's an interesting one from Alex Petrovic. I hope I said your name right. His Twitter is at @sand_slasher. So he responded with Zegras, Doc, Podkolzin. None of these at 6, please. So I asked him why, because I told him that we were fans of Zegras, and he said nothing against him. I just feel we have our top 2 centers already. Then with Veleno coming soon, we should focus more on other needs. We need D, but Byram might be gone. We need a sniper on the right-hand side too. I like Caulfield for that, but these are just my preferences. And I said, nothing wrong with that. That's why we asked the question. I think what that comment would tell me is that you really believe that AA is the number 2 center for the Red Wings. And if that's your stance, then I understand where that's coming from. I personally don't feel that I've seen enough of AA at center to convince me that he should be a center. I think he's a center on the Red Wings, but I don't think when the Red Wings get to where they want to be, where they're contending for a cup and for a deep playoff run, I see that at some point we found an ideal number 2 center to allow AA to get put on the wing back where I think he's the most effective, or possibly we've made a trade that involves AA to help bring in somebody on defense. So that was that comment. What are your thoughts on that?
No, I mean, I had, that's kind of an interesting thought too, because I wanted to mention the fact that, he brought up Veleno, and not that like I said, I don't have any issue with Veleno as a prospect, himself, but it's just the fact that we talked about it off air, and just the fact that we just don't really think that Veleno is necessarily that guaranteed second line center. So I'm just a little, I understand where he's coming from in that sense, but it's hard for me to think that that AA and Veleno are kind of those definitive center positions where I'm confident about straying away from center. Like I don't hate Cole Caulfield. Like I like Cole Caulfield as a prospect. I've talked about how much I've
he was your pick last time we talked.
He was my pick last time because I'm seriously in love with his goal scoring ability. I mean, the Red Wings have struggled so heavily with goal scoring, and I think he comes in in the next couple of years and makes instant impact. But, the more you kind of talk to me about it and sort of convince me, it's just the fact that I've looked at the center situation. I've looked at the lack of a true playmaker on, and guy who can set the play up. That I realize that it's more crucial than just scoring goals, because a guy like Caulfield's not going to be able to score goals if he doesn't have someone who can set him up. So, and the Red Wings don't have that, you know what I mean? Because they have a lot of pure goal scorers who are good at that, but they don't really have a whole lot of setup guys. And that's where a guy like Zegras comes in. And I'm not sold on the fact that he's a playmaker. I think he's a very one-dimensional goal scorer. He's got speed and can score goals. That's what he does.
Well, let's just, what I would say is, look at Zadina, okay? Mm-hmm. So when we drafted Zadina last year, all we heard about was how great of a goal scorer this guy was.
Absolutely, yeah,
right?
For sure.
Now, what we learned about Zadina after we drafted him, by looking into him more and learning more about him, the dude is also a high-end, I'm not going to say elite yet because I haven't seen enough of it yet, but he's definitely a high-end playmaker. He's a high-end skater. So let's just, if we were to compare Zadina to Caulfield right now, I would still take Zadina over Caulfield if I had to make the choice today. And the reason I say that is because with Zadina, this is how special this guy was, okay, when we got him. Mm-hmm. He not only is an elite goal scorer, he has the playmaking ability and the skating ability to go with it. He's got a high hockey IQ. He's not afraid to play physical. This guy, honestly, is getting a bum rap right now. I don't want to say by everybody, but there's been a lot of sentiment out there about how we should have taken Quinn Hughes or Bouchard or whatever. And I guess I don't want to get into that too much. That was last year's draft. But my point is, we don't know everything there is to know about these guys yet. We've barely seen them play. All we're going on is rankings from a lot of experts and what we've been able to see ourselves, and we're looking at what the team needs are, or at least, they all, if you, what's his name? Yzerman had a really good quote last week about, are you looking at taking the best player available, or, are you going to do it by need? And he goes, we need to take the best player. We'll take the best player available, like at a position of need or something like that. I forget exactly how he said it, but basically he said it's both, right? Yeah. Mm-hmm. And Cole Caulfield would be awesome. He'd be exciting. It'd be fun to watch him, but only if he was able to get the puck on his stick. Mm-hmm. And he's not the kind of guy that, I'm not going to say he doesn't make his own plays, because he definitely can, but he's not a burner. Like, he's not going to fly up the wing like AA does, okay? This is a guy that picks his spots. He finds where to go like an Ovechkin, and he rips it. And he can score from the rebound. He can score from the circle, from the point. He can score from anywhere, okay? But at some point, you got to have a guy that can get him the puck. And I think that's why you see so much attention on Zegras and even Kirby Dach, because they have that skill set to get people the puck. So Caulfield to me is almost like, drafting is almost like us, drafting Zadina again, but without some of the other assets to his game, but maybe a little bit more goal scoring. At this point, I think they need a guy that can play up the middle, that can get people the puck and distribute and drive play. Mm-hmm. That's just my opinion.
No, I completely agree, and that's a big point that kind of swayed me. It's the fact that you talked about Zadina and stuff like that, and and there was a lot of conversation last year because you had guys who came up to the main roster, mainly Taro Hirose last year, who played so well, and he scored more points than Zadina did in his time on the main roster, but I wouldn't say he necessarily played better because a point that you made was the fact that Zadina played at one of the toughest stretches that the Red Wings had during the season. I mean, they went through a really bad stretch. He wasn't on the right line for the longest time. He was stuck with like Abdelkader and I can't remember who else on that line. Just
Nielsen.
Nielsen on that.
Vanek a little bit.
Oh, Vanek. Yeah, he played with Vanek. And you actually predicted that last year. That was actually such a good prediction. You said if Vanek's on the ice with him, he said he's going to score his first goal. And I still remember that. That's still seriously one of the best predictions you've made or I've heard in a while. It's the fact that you were just like, oh, wow, he's definitely going to score. If Vanek's on the ice with him, he's going to score his first goal. And what do you know?
Little bit of luck went into that, I'm sure. But, I mean, I just think at the end of the day, it's so early to start making judgments on players that you either haven't even seen or haven't seen more than because I don't even know how many people have watched him play in Grand Rapids unless you live down there. I mean, so all most of us have really seen at this point of these guys are highlights. So.
Yeah, we've seen one season of the kid. I mean. But, I mean, he played on the main roster for 9 games. That's literally the extent that most, I would say, like 85 to 90% of the people who watch the Red Wings have seen. And you
know what? In those 9 games, he was one of the most exciting things to watch.
Honestly, yeah, because, the Red Wings, I'm going to be a little, blunt here, and just the fact that the Red Wings at times – a lot last season were not a very interesting hockey team to watch play hockey. They looked lazy, they looked slow, and a part of that comes down to coaching, but we're not really going to delve into that too much. But when Zadina was up on the main roster, it was exciting to watch the Red Wings. It's so much fun to watch the prospects, guys like this play. And
but Chase, it's doubtful that he'll challenge for a spot next year.
Yeah, apparently it's doubtful that he'll challenge for a spot next year, according to Helene St. James from the Free Press, which is just...
I sent her a nice little note about that. and you know what? It's shame on her. I don't know. I like Helene. I like Helene. I'm just joking.
It's nothing about it. It's nothing against
I don't know
her.
where... I just don't know where that comes from when you look at what... I mean, even Yzerman said in his press conference that they've got roster positions open. So, I mean, if your top pick from last year, who, is still the most talented prospect in your system right now, is not challenging for a spot, but Jacob, De La Rose and Christopher N.R., then I don't know.
I was gonna say, if Zadina is not challenging for a roster spot, who the hell is? I mean, seriously, they're just that's what I mean. Like, Zadina is probably purely one of the best prospects, if not the best prospect that the Wings have in their system currently. And I don't have an issue with Helene St. James. I like a lot of the stuff that she does in the Free Press, but I don't understand that comment coming from.
It was a bonehead statement to make. It makes no sense. So I don't know, Helene, if you're listening, which I know you're not, we'd love to have you come on the podcast one day so you can state your case. I just don't know what that case would be. So the 2019 draft, though, I mean, there's definitely it's really interesting because last year it was all about the defensemen, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure.
And this year it's all about the forwards, at least at the top half. I mean, most people consensus is that there's only going to be one defenseman picked in the top 10, maybe 2, with Philip Broberg, who's been picking up a lot of steam lately, but not to not enough to make me think that it's somebody like, say, the Red Wings would consider. So a lot of people think that's going to be something that, like, Edmonton or Anaheim might do or something like that. I don't know. But the Red Wings obviously have their pick of high end forwards to go with. And looking at the Twitter message thing, I'll look at a couple more of these picks that people said that they would prefer to stay away from, if that's cool with you. Jared Brown had said Podkolzin, Krebs, and Boldy are three I'd like to avoid. I live in Saskatoon, so have been able to see Doc play a lot more than others, and I'm not down on him as many other Red Wings fans are. Zegras is who I hope we take. So I thought that was really interesting. So first of all, Podkolzin, we've already talked about him today. Krebs is dealing with an Achilles injury, which is part of the reason he's dropping down, but a lot of people are high on Krebs. Krebs is really a talented player. I don't know if you know much about him, but he plays in the WHL for Winnipeg. That's going to scare some teams off though with that Achilles injury. But he's definitely a very talented player that a lot of folks have been talking about. Then you've got Boldy. Matthew Boldy is the other guy other than Caulfield and Kaliev, or I might be saying his name wrong. Arthur Kaliev. He's a very talented goal scorer, and a lot of people think he's one of the most complete players in the draft. Just a really, like a baseball term, 5-tool player. He can do everything really, really, really well. And a lot of people like him. But as far as value at number 6, I definitely can see why you'd want to, go a different route, because if you're talking about number 6, you're wanting somebody with elite skill set, and I don't really know that Boldy is elite in any one particular area, but he's definitely high end in the others. And then I asked Jared, what his thoughts are on Doc, since he's seen him a lot more, and he said he protects the puck really well down low. Very noticeable on a good Saskatoon team that gave Prince Albert a great fight. If Doc and Zegras are available, Zegras must be taken at 6. I would probably take Doc over Caulfield, though, as we have so many wingers. So again, that plays into the whole, we need a high-end, elite, skilled playmaker over another scoring winger. I think the whole thing that comes into play, though, is when you've got a guy that's so good at scoring goals as Cole Caulfield is, you do have to take a second look and wonder, oh man, we're not talking about, a Matthew Boldy here or Kaliev. We're talking about a guy that just broke Alexander Ovechkin's record for, I forget what it was. Not Ovechkin, it was Phil Kessel, right? I forgot what it was, but for the tournaments that he's played in, or how many goals he scored in his draft year or something like that. I mean, the guy's putting up a ridiculous amount of goals. So I think because of that, you still have to kind of question yourself a little bit,
Yeah.
Like, do we really want to pass up on this guy? Is Kirby Doc as good of a playmaker as Cole Caulfield is a goal scorer? It's it's tough. I get it. I get what folks are saying here. Let's take a look here. Yeah, I mean, Podkolzin was definitely the guy that I saw the most concern about. And I know there's a lot of folks out there that feel that way just because of the reasons that we had already mentioned before.
But again, like a lot of people, like, I don't really have an issue with Podkolzin. I don't I share the same doubts as you, is the fact that I don't really think he's the best player available at 6, and I think we've really been kind of focusing, down on taking the best player available because, 9 times out of 10, the Red Wings should absolutely do that. And, as much as I don't want the Red Wings to, to play it safe and, not that playing it safe is bad, taking a guy like Cousins or something like that wouldn't be, because he's sort of like one of those guaranteed players. I want to see them take a little bit of risk, but I still wanted to take the best player available. So, I mean, if that's, whether that's Zegras or Caulfield or whoever it is, I mean, I just think, I don't know. But again, I don't really hate the Podkolzin now, but I understand people wanting to avoid him. I know, the guys over the Grindline podcast agree with that. I know they're not super high on Podkolzin over there, but
Well, and it's funny. So if we're talking about other podcasts, I know Winged Wheel, like I forget which guy it is, there is not high on Kirby Dach at all. And I think that question is there. There is a concern about his skating not being. But it's funny because I've seen conflicting reports about that. About his skating. But his upside as a playmaker is too hard to ignore. Kind of similar, really, if you think about it. We're talking about holes that these players will have. I mean, Cole Caulfield is 5'7". I mean, and he's not physical. So if you're, really concerned about size, and there's always the Red Wing fan out there that is, obsessed with, size, you got to look at what the league is today. Is size that big of a deal? It's more about how big you play, not how big you are. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, guys like Goudreau and DeBrincat wouldn't be able to do what they're doing. Marchand, I mean, can you imagine Marchand playing the way that he plays if he did that in the 80s with Bob Probert and Joey Kosher and Ty Domi around? Do you think he'd get away with half of the shit that he does?
Yeah, I know.
Dude, his Gargamel nose would have been punched in like after 1 week in the NHL. So it's just the way the league is today. So, I mean, I think Cole Caulfield is going to be fine as long as he is committed to growing his game and filling out physically and following what teams want him to do. I mean, dude, Brett Hall didn't move all that fast. Look at how many goals he scored. Luc Robitaille was told he couldn't skate. Brett Hall was told that he was lazy. I mean, all these guys did was make the Hall of Fame because they could score goals. So I mean, whatever. I mean, all these players have something they're going to have to work on at the end of the day. So it's not that big of a deal. I will say we did our poll again. We did a poll the other week about, who you want the Red Wings to take. And I'm trying to find the original poll, but the one that we ran today actually had Trevor Zegras inching out Cole Caulfield by 1 percentage point at 37 to 36%. Kirby Dach at 12 and Dylan Cousins at 15. And you and I have had conversations in previous episodes about the whole Dach versus Cousins thing. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, I think that really just comes down to preference. I think Cousins is the safer pick. He's pretty much, you're going to, a lot of people think he's going to be a winger instead of a center. Like Craig Button, for example, happens to think that, he really should be a little bit further down in some of the rankings that have been out there. Like Bob McKenzie's rankings has him up there pretty high, because he assumes that he's going to end up being a center. Whereas Craig Button, who's, I have a lot of respect for what that guy does. He's pretty accurate with his rankings, honestly. Mm-hmm. He doesn't see long term that Cousins ends up being a center. He sees him being a winger, and for that reason, mostly, the value of the pick is a little bit lower because centers are, what you build, what you really build your team on, centers and defense. So, I mean, they're different players though. One of our followers on Twitter had said, picking Cousins would be like, I think it was either Cousins or Doc would be like picking Rasmussen all over again. I kind of get that. I don't know if I agree with it.
I understand where they're coming from with
But
that.
I do, I do
think,
understand where they're coming from because,
I don't
another
think
big guy,
Yeah.
another big guy who, was kind of like a safe pick.
Yeah, I just think that's an unfair. I mean, you mentioned. I mean, they're two different players. Just because they're two big guys and they're relatively safe picks, I don't really think that's fair to necessarily call them the same player and say that's the same pick all over again. I mean, I see the comparison. I understand the point they're alluding to, but I just don't think that's necessarily a fair comparison.
I think it's just the concern is that they haven't seen any elite skill set yet from Rasmussen, and he's considered by a lot of people now to basically be a power play specialist. But look, if you've got a 6'6" guy that is on the power play every night, standing in front of the goalie, who's also 6'6" in today's NHL,
I don't have any issue. Yeah,
I mean, you basically have a guy that has, Holmstrom's skill set in front of the net. Right?
Yeah.
And the guy can skate. He's not the best skater, but he can skate pretty good. He's got a high hockey IQ, and darn well, based on what he did in juniors and even the goals that he scored at the NHL level, that he's really good in tight. And that's where so many goals are scored now at the NHL level. So I'm still high in Rasmussen. I don't care what anybody says. To me, it's been way too early. The guy probably should have spent a year at Grand Rapids, but because of the rules, he couldn't. That's not his fault. But he was too good for juniors. He was not going to learn anything more by playing junior hockey against kids. He needed to play against men and learn the league. And I think you give this kid some time, whether he goes to Grand Rapids next year or he plays on the third line for the Red Wings this year, and they continually to give him more opportunities. I don't know that I would agree that drafting Doc or Cousins is the same thing all over again as Rasmussen.
I completely agree because again, like Rasmussen's a guy who struggled with injury as well, and again, that's not his fault. He's had a lot of hiccups in his career, and that's kind of the same thing we saw with Svechnikov and stuff.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to lift weights when your wrist is broken, right?
Yeah, that's exactly what I mean. So it's so tough. We haven't seen enough of these guys, and I'm really looking forward to seeing a guy like Svechnikov back in the lineup next year. I mean, I'm not sure if you guys saw on Twitter, but the Red Wings posted that big they highlighted every single first round draft pick, starting with Anthony Mantha all the way up to currently. I think that was the tweet, and they did, and I just thought it was cool because I look back and I'm like, oh my goodness, I forgot that these guys were first round draft picks. You just haven't seen enough of them yet, and that just goes to show you how much time it takes to develop these guys, and we just gotta play it patient because
some people are already calling Svechnikov a bust. I don't.
He hasn't played at all.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at his first season in Grand Rapids, the kid put 20 goals up. I mean, if that's dominating the AHL like Helene St. James wants, then he should definitely be challenging for a spot this year on the roster, right? So sorry, Helene. I'm sorry. I just had to do that. But I guess my point is that he looked pretty darn good at that point. He struggled with his production the following year. And then, they brought him up to Detroit in a couple different instances, and they started to, at the end of that season, I think he started to identify what type of game he needed to play to be successful in the NHL, which is, somebody that's strong on the cycle, that can hold on to the puck, that can, have really good, strong board play. He's a big guy, he's got a good shot, he's a smart kid. But he's got a confidence issue, and that really can only be resolved by really getting in a good position where he can, put up some numbers and start to see that he is a high-end prospect for the Red Wings. So, I'm not saying like, the sky is always blue and like he's going to end up being a 20-30 goal scorer for the Wings like next year or anything like that. I mean, I guess what I'm saying is you see now, these kids that we're drafting, you're hoping that they turn out to be NHL players within the next, 1 to 3 years. Right. And hopefully that time is closer to the 1 to 2 year range for players that we're drafting, like Zadina or whoever we get on Friday, number 6. But sometimes they surprise us and they might, come in earlier, like maybe a Veleno, or they might take a little bit longer to get here, like a Gustav Lidstrom or Lindstrom.
Yeah, Lindstrom.
So we don't know yet. I mean, I think that, to me, whoever we get at number 6, there's one factor now that we have in our favor that we didn't have before, and that's Steve Yzerman's making the pick.
Yeah, for sure.
And he values talent and skill over just something like, size or, just positional need. He is going to make his decision based on skill. So I think we're in a good place, honestly.
No, I completely agree. I mean, that's the thing. I mean, like, I'm so excited for this draft. I really am. Like, it's not that I haven't followed the Red Wings. I'm going to say this is the most I followed the Red Wings in terms of the draft out of, my time with the Red Wings. It's just, like I said, I'm excited to see this draft. I'm excited to see what the Red Wings are going to do with this pick, because we've, talked for weeks and weeks about speculation, and we've changed our, our thoughts and opinions and all sorts of stuff. Like we said, we've seen Podkolzin as the top 3 guy, and now we're seeing him outside the top 10. We've seen guys like this go all over the place, and it's just it's going to be exciting to see kind of all this stuff pay off, because we've been waiting so long. It's all the draft type, and I feel like it's it's going to be worth it. I mean, the Red Wings will get a solid guy at 6 regardless of who they draft. I think they get a solid guy coming into the program, and it's really just a win-win, honestly. Like, there's hype around the draft, and I think I have confidence that Yzerman's going to sort of live up to that hype. You know what I mean? It's like,
I don't know, man. I think after not being able to land Jacob Trouba, they need to second guess that decision. Sorry,
man, we are apparently the full sarcasm episode.
I'm a little bit salty today.
Yeah, yeah, we're apparently a little bit salty, but hey, I mean, like I said, it's whatever. I mean, that's how fans are. That's just the second something doesn't go their way. I'm just surprised at the amount of people who actually not necessarily turned on Yzerman, but people were like, "Oh, I can't." Yzerman's not running he's doing the same thing as Holland, just standing around. Like, really? Because he didn't give up a first round pick and a top prospect for Jacob Trouba.
Yeah, I mean, look, I so far that's been definitely the minority. But when somebody says things like that, it definitely sticks out, because the majority of the roster, the majority of the fan base is, still in the honeymoon phase here.
Yeah.
I mean, I know I am, so
yeah.
and I'm just as critical as any, cynical Red Wings fan out there. So I get it. But I'm just going to tell everybody, just like I said this before when within the last couple episodes, pump the brakes a little bit. This guy's going to do things that you don't understand at first. The fans in Tampa didn't know any better, because not many people gave a damn too much about hockey in Tampa at the time that Yzerman took over. They were 6-7 years removed from a Stanley Cup, and most people aren't really thinking about hockey down there. Now they are now, but I mean, at that time the team was in dire straits. So I mean, he's taken on a Red Wings team now that we've gotten some prospects in here. We've had a couple a couple drafts with a lot of picks, and we've acquired a lot more talent. But I think that if you're looking for Yzerman to make a huge splash at this draft and start moving assets to move up a couple spots to get like a Bowen Byram, it's not going to happen, guys. It's not going to happen. I know that just because Yzerman came on board, we're really excited about it, but we're going to take a guy at 6 that we're going to find out is going to be very talented, and we're going to be happy with him. Anybody that's not Jack Hughes and Capo Caco is going to take 1 to 3 years to get onto the Red Wings. So, that's just the nature of it. None of these guys, other than the 2 that we just talked about, are probably ready to step in right now.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't see anyone, no one who the Red Wings drafted 6 is going to be, you guys aren't going to see him on the main roster next year. It's just not.
Part of it too, man, is last year we drafted Zadina, and a lot of people thought that he was going to step in right away too. And I think there was some initial disappointment that he didn't make the team right away.
For sure.
And I get that, because the Red Wings haven't drafted that high in, more than 25 years. So, it's tough, dude, because, you finally get a guy that, like, you consider to be one of the top, 3 players in the draft last year, and you're thinking, oh man, we finally got a guy that's going to jump right in. And, in a way he kind of did. I mean, the guy played for Grand Rapids for most of the year, but he got some playing time already. I mean, until Dylan Larkin made the Red Wings, like 1 year removed from his draft, like most Red Wing players that we draft did not even get a sniff or get a whiff of the Red Wings roster for a long time. And look how long it took after drafting guys like Nyquist and Tatar, who pretty much not long after they got drafted were considered to be, home run picks for us. It took them a long time. These kids are getting onto the team quicker than they ever have before. But this fan base has not seen us be able to draft guys this high, and we year after year we see guys being rushed onto a NHL roster, and doesn't really work very well for most of those teams. It usually takes some time.
Yeah, no, I and that's the thing, but Zadina apparently isn't ready to go up on the he's not ready to contend for a roster spot, considering he's not ready.
He's not ready yet. Overripe. She must still think that Ken Holland's running this team.
Yeah, honestly.
I don't know.
She must not be, or maybe she's, maybe she's got a thing. Maybe she doesn't like the Yzerman hire. Maybe she's like, I wish Ken Holland was still the general manager so we could, take a slower approach. And it's just like
Ryan actually from Grindline podcast had commented on it because we both had commented on it. And he's he had said, I'd like an explanation as to who will provide better offensive ability for a team who is 21st in scoring and a negative 48 goal differential. Abdicator, Glendening, Helm, please.
That's what I mean. It's like Zadina could literally step in the roster and start above any of those guys. Honestly, he really could. I mean, I
think it's just going to take some time for the Yzerman's approach, his culture to kind of we're used to seeing the way, and who knows, man, it could be cynicism from her, being like, look, I've seen this story 100 times. I know what they're going to do. They're going to keep this kid in the minors for another year, that could be very well where she's coming from. It might be more or less, what she thinks the Wings are going to do versus what she thinks they should do. I don't know, but it's just on paper, it looks stupid. It does. It just looks stupid.
Yeah, it looks. It just looks.
Man, I got to move on from this, man. I don't know why. I don't know why this bothers me so much. It's just this person gets paid to write this stuff, and I'm just like, dude, man, Are you trying to bum me out or what?
I know you trying to make it so I don't want to tune in the Red Wings next year, or what? What's your deal?
Dude, if Zadina is not on the Red Wings next year, like at least more than half the season, I really am gonna struggle through some of these games.
Yeah, I know. And that's what I mean. Like, Zadina gives us something to look forward to, and that's what I think is the most important thing, because that's, regardless of, I mean, here's the thing. Little Caesars Arena, if you look at, they had to freaking put black seat covers over some of the seats there to hide the fact that they were having attendance issues. I mean, like, why turn down, your biggest draw right now besides, Dylan Larkin and a couple of those other guys. I mean, come on. I mean, Philip Zadina's a big name already. He's only played 9 games, with the Red Wings. So I don't understand what the big deal is to hold him back when the kid's clearly ready to step up, and there's open roster spots like Eisman said. So
Yeah, well, and I think too, because Rasmussen played up all last year.
Yeah.
I mean, how much more ready was Rasmussen able to, was he ready than Zadina is? So I don't know. I mean, and even Rasmussen, like we said, I mean, he, as big as he is, he hasn't been able to really work out a ton, prior to this summer.
Yeah.
So, I mean, he still needs to get stronger. I mean, imagine that guy putting on another 10 pounds, 15 pounds of muscle at his frame. I mean, you're not even going to be able to move the guy in front of the net. So I'm excited. I know you're excited. I think this draft offers a lot of opportunity, for us to get better. I think the one concern that I think everyone has, and then this is why, people are bummed out about the draft lottery position, is we know we need a number 1 defenseman.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Do we have centers in our system that we think could play the number 2 role? Maybe. Maybe Veleno's just is really that good. I don't think that I buy AA as a long-term solution at center. We've seen him play enough to know what kind of player he is, and he did play a lot better last year. But I don't know that I see him as a playmaking center that drives play, and I don't know that I buy Hirose as a number 2 winger. I think Hirose is probably, when this is all said and done, he's a really high value, third line winger that
I agree.
can help a guy like a Veleno with playmaking and set up somebody on the wing for some goals. I'm just saying, let's take the best player that we can get.
Mm-hmm.
And after you get the best players you can get, you have options. You can make decisions. Let Yzerman do his thing. At some point, we're going to see a player jettisoned off to another team to bring in somebody else, more than likely on defense, to kind of help, get that defense built up the way that it needs to be. In the meantime, Hronek, Cholowski, hopefully McIsaac in the future, Gustav Lindstrom. You've got some guys coming up that, will fit into that top 4. We just got to find that number 1, number 2 guy. And it might be Hronek. It might not be. We'll see.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't think that you can expect a bunch of crazy fireworks from Steve Yzerman at the draft. I think at some point we're going to see some things like that. But it sounds to me, man, I don't know about you, but it sounds to me from the interviews that I heard, they're going to put a lot of focus on trying to get the most value they can for the picks that they have. And if something falls in their lap, they get an offer they can't refuse, they'll make it. If they see an opportunity to grab a guy that's maybe a few spots ahead of them, like say in the second round where they're picking at the end of the second round, do they package one of those picks to move up if there's a defenseman that they're really high on?
Mm-hmm.
That kind of thing I could see happening. But I would not expect them to move up, and I don't expect them to move down. If they do move down, I think it's some hell of a deal that Yzerman has worked out, and I'm going to trust them because obviously they've done their homework and they know what they're looking for. So you have to assume that that they're doing what they think's in the best interest of the team. And hey, let's give Holland some credit here too, because, you know, that guy moved a couple spots down just a few years ago, traded Datsuk's money away, and we ended up getting 2 defensemen for the future that look like they're going to be pretty darn good, that could be top 4 defensemen in Cholowski and Hronek.
Absolutely.
It looks like we hit on both of those guys and in the first and second round. So, you know, same thing happened. We moved down and we were able to get Anthony Mantha and Tyler Bertuzzi. So, I mean, if he moves down, guys, it's probably for a really good reason, and they know what they're doing.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm not saying you should have blind faith all the time, but, I mean, you know, I know at least for this draft I am.
I know, that's what I mean. I think, yeah, I don't know. I get we've kind of been, you know, trying to avoid as much blind faith, but I'm just, like I said, I'm so excited for this draft. I really am. It's not that I want it to be over with. I just want to know, you know, we've been talking about, so I just want to know who the pick is. I really do. I want to know what in the world's going on in the head of Steve Yzerman, because he's been so quiet, you know, and that's
we're not used to that, dude.
We're not used to that. Yeah, we're not used to not hearing a bunch of stuff, and, you know,
Holland would talk a lot without saying a lot, right?
Yeah.
But he would say things that would infuriate you at times.
Yeah, and you're just like,
right?
But,
and he's already spouted off, like, in some TSN website page I saw today about, you know, how the focus for them is going to be, you know, forward depth. I'm like, okay, so you're obviously not looking at taking Broberg then. So if I'm the team that's drafting behind you, then I'm not picking up the phone to call you to make a move, because I'm not worried that, you know, you're going to take him, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, I guess the thing is, like, you know, Yzerman's not going to say any of that at all. So it kind of leaves us in a position where, you know, there's a lot of speculation and you don't know what to believe. You don't know what to, you know, all you know is that more than likely what you're hearing is probably not at all what's going to happen. Because Yzerman isn't talking. And that's, you know, Yzerman's kind of known for that, because they would, you know, you would see things come out of Tampa Bay that, you know, just out of nowhere, something would happen. So it's exciting. I don't know if do you have anything else to hit on today? I think we've pretty much covered most of what we wanted to cover. I know there's been a couple, you know, trade rumbling. There's been some moves around the league lately with, you know, with Trouba and stuff like that. The only other Red Wings related thing that we've heard recently, besides the potential of Detroit moving down, I know apparently Vancouver is really trying to move up, and Detroit has apparently talked to teams about moving down. Not that we really buy into that so much, but it's out there. But there's been a lot of talk about Krug from Boston, and how Boston is going to have a really hard time re-signing him next year. He's from Michigan, going to make a lot of money. He's older than Trouba, but, you know, he's a better defenseman than Trouba is at this point of his career. And apparently people are saying that the Red Wings would be all over that, and that they're interested already, and expect that if something happens, the Red Wings are going to be the first ones to be all over it. And this is coming from some pretty reputable hockey folks out there. So what are your thoughts on that? I mean, I guess first of all, you know, is Krug somebody that excites you? Do you think it's realistic? You know, what would you be willing to give up to land him with the opportunity to potentially sign him to I don't know about, well, I guess it probably would be an 8-year deal if we get him. What are your thoughts on Krug?
I like Krug as a defenseman. Don't get me wrong. I just don't really think it's necessarily a realistic option. I'm not necessarily, you know, like you mentioned, he's older than Trouba. He's not necessarily someone I want to sign to, you know, like an 8-year deal. It's just, I don't have an issue with signing, with signing him at all. I mean, he's, like I said, he's a good defenseman. I mean, the dude just played in, you know, the Stanley Cup final. So clearly he's doing something right. And I mean, he's one of Boston's better defenders. So my thought on it is just the fact that I'm not 100% sure if I'm buying into the fact that I'm not buying into the fact that Boston's going to let him go. First of all, I don't see him necessarily leaving the Bruins program per se. I know they have a lot of people to re-sign, but honestly, I just don't know if they're going to let him go. Honestly, I mean, I think there are other players they could let go versus losing Torrey Krug. Like, I get he's going to need a big deal, and I know they have to sign McAvoy and a couple other guys, but again, I'm not necessarily looking into the hype too much. He'd be a good addition, but I think I'm more high on guys, developing prospects from the inside rather than signing guys. I guess not that I was against signing Trouba or anything, but honestly, I think that Hronek has potential to become a better defenseman than Trouba is. I mean, the Red Wings do need help on defense, but I feel like Krug would just be sort of one of those like filler kind of defensive players where you get a couple good years out of him, and then he ends up being dead weight towards the end of his contract. So I just feel like
the argument to that though is that defensemen. I mean, look at Mark Giordano just won a Norris at 35 years old.
Yeah.
And that guy plays a physical style of hockey. Torrey Krug is, a little bit on the lighter side. He's not, he's only, he's 5'9", 186 pounds or something like that. He's, according to Hockey DB, he puts up big numbers, man. I mean, every year the guy's putting up, last 3 years in a row, 50 plus points. But I think my thought is you don't really have a chance to get a number one defenseman very often. I find it hard to believe that Boston's going to trade him to a division rival. So I think if we're really going to get him, I think it's going to be a situation where he's available on the UFA market next year because I think it's a challenge because you're talking about a team that just made it to the Stanley Cup, and he's one of your core players on that team. If the reports are true that they know there's no way they're going to be able to fit him, they're going to be able to pay him what he's going to want to get paid. With all the other guys that they've got to sign to keep that team together, and they feel strongly enough about what they have coming through the pipeline where they can move them. You're talking about a Columbus situation where they basically treat them as their own rental next year, take their chances at another cup run with Chara playing another year, or if they're not performing up to par at the trade deadline, possibly doing what they can to get whatever value they can. But I can't imagine if Boston is in the playoff picture next year, which they probably will be, that they're going to trade away one of their best defensemen, if not their best defenseman right now.
Yeah.
No, I find that hard to believe.
Yeah.
So if it happens, it will either happen during the summer before they start the season, or it'll happen mid-season if the team is floundering, which I don't expect to happen. I don't think Florida or Montreal or Buffalo or any of those other teams are ready to overtake the current three teams sitting at the top of the Atlantic Division next year. Really, we don't know what all the talk is that Florida is going to do the whole deal to get Panarin and the goaltender, Bobrovsky. So if they do that, they've already got Quenneville in there as a coach. Obviously that helps. I don't know that I would say that they're going to displace Toronto or Boston though yet. So I find it, like you said, I find it hard to believe that they're going to trade Krug, but it's a possibility. I just think, the premium that they would put on him for Yzerman to land him as a division rival, even if we're not contending or really a serious contender against Boston right now for that playoff spot. I just don't see it happening. I think their best chances, Krug plays out the year. They take their chances with him. They're a cup team or cup contender. They take their chances and he becomes a UFA. They offer him a big deal, but it's not enough. And then the Red Wings make him a better deal, and that's what happens. I mean, Yzerman doesn't seem too eager to give up assets right now to make a big splash. I think if the splash comes, it's going to be, he even kind of said it, right? I mean, if you listen to his comments, he kind of said, his preference would be to fill some spots in UFA before having to trade away assets. Cause honestly, they don't really have a lot of them right now. The last thing they want to do is start pilfering from their 2018 draft prospects and giving up on guys like a Veleno or a Bergeron or a McIsaac in order to land a guy for a year that you don't know for sure is going to re-sign with you long term.
No, I completely agree. So, all right. Yeah. So the draft is coming up, we're definitely looking forward to that. I appreciate you guys tuning in this week. I hope you guys are just as excited for the draft as we are. Be sure to look out on our Twitter at Hockeytown Rundown, Hockey TWN Run DWN. I'm going to be live tweeting the draft, and be sure to look out at our main site at Michigan Sports Entertainment for all the articles regarding the draft picks that the Red Wings make. I know Jay and I'm sure Jay will be tweeting out just as much about the draft as well, and we'll kind of share our excitement or disappointment. Not that we'll be disappointed with any of the picks, but
so my Twitter responses will be delayed because I am going to be in Fort Wayne, Indiana, the night of the draft for something called Gear Fest for music stuff, and I'm going to purposely not open Twitter this time, because I want to be surprised and I want to follow along with it when it's, I'm going to DVR it, record it on my phone, and watch it in my hotel Friday night after the fun has already happened, so I can see, so I can be surprised. Last year, I made the mistake of opening up Twitter when I was eating dinner when I was at the same event last year, and saw the Zadina thing, and I was so excited, but none of my friends knew the hell who I was talking about. So I'm like, oh my God, they just got Zadina. It's like, who's that? I'm like, oh my God. So I couldn't really say much. You could only say so much. So both Wings fans, but not to the point like we are. So I am probably not going to say too much until after I get a chance to see what transpires. I'm going to leave you to that, but I'll definitely do my fair share of commenting after I find out what happened.
Okay, so I guess in terms of a live draft coverage, you guys have to turn to me. So I'll be live tweeting on the Hockeytown Rundown Twitter, and I'll be tweeting as well on my personal page at Chase Sussex, SUSSEX. So you guys can be sure to look out for that. I know you're not gonna. I know you're not going to be around for the actual live reactions for the draft, but you guys can still check out Jay on Twitter. Where can they find you?
It's just J_Croft, and the at is Warm Chord Music.
All right. So again, we appreciate you guys tuning in this week. I hope you guys enjoyed the draft. We're get to get this up before the draft comes around on Friday, but let us know a little bit more about, as the draft approaches, if there's any more players that you want to see the Red Wings possibly draft or the Red Wings possibly avoid. Be sure to hit us up on Twitter. We'll be continuing to post more videos. I will be posting. I'm going to try to post a video in response to our pick in the first round. So look out for that. We're going to be posting some polls and stuff like that too. And look out for some future episodes. We've got some exciting stuff. We'll have some special guests coming on the podcast pretty soon, so you guys can look out for that. Be sure to stay updated. Be sure to be looking at our Twitter and check us out to see all sorts of things that you guys can be looking forward to and seeing some of the special guests. And
we don't want to, but if it works out the way we hope it will, we think we'll have a pretty special episode coming up between the development camp and free agency. So that should be pretty exciting. So we're working the details out, but at this point it looks pretty promising, and we're pretty excited about it.
Yeah, so be sure to check it out. We're gonna try to do some collaborations this summer with some of your other favorite Red Wings podcasts and see what we can do to set that up. So if there's someone you guys want to see us work with, be sure to let us know and we can try to get that set up. But with that said, I think we'll wrap up today's episode.
Sounds good, Chase. Enjoy the draft.
Yeah, me too, man.
Let's hope that we. Well, I know we'll get somebody good, but let's hope it's who we're cheering for. So
absolutely. All right, I'll talk to you guys later. We're signing off for now. See you guys.
Bye.